is gonna wash the cage of oyster, because sometimes when they leave the oysters under the water, you have some algae that grows around the cage, so they need to clean them. Okay, so that's Moana who cleans the oyster, and Moana is the guy one right here. Okay, so he cleans the cage of oyster. When the oyster arrive here, so because sometimes under the water you have some other oyster that grows on the side. That's what he's doing right now. He's cutting the oysters that grows on the side off, because sometimes the oyster that grows on the side, they can hurt the oysters like that.
They eat each other.
Yeah, they're like parasite, so they can damage a shell like that. Okay, so the oyster that you have here, they damage. Yeah. That's why he has to cut it off. And then after that, when the oyster arrive here, then he put an instrument inside to open the shell, and he put a piece of plastic to hold the opening of the oyster. No, it doesn't hurt the oyster. And then when the oyster goes inside, the grafter is going to put this instrument to open the oyster, and this is the maximum size they have to open the oyster. So you can pass it down. If they open the oyster too much, they kill the oyster. Yeah. And this is how they do the graft. So they have to do the graft to have that open. Okay?
And you need to hold it.
So they have to open the to do the graft to cut that open.
Yeah. Will you hold it, Daddy?
Okay, so when they start the graft,
Okay.
so for the graft they need two bodies. Okay, so they need two bodies for the graft, for the artificial insemination. So they need two bodies. So the first body that they need is a piece of living tissue from another oyster that they have to sacrifice. Okay, so what's happened then? They open the oyster like that, and they use a mirror. They use a mirror that they put in inside the oyster to have an idea about the color produced on the edge of the mother of pearl. Okay, so the color that you have on the edge of the mother of pearl will be the same color when they do the graft. It will be the same color of the pearl. So, for example,
Pretty hard, huh?
so you better use the light. You also have to notice the color.
Oh yeah.
Otherwise, you can see different colors like green. Yeah, and the color that you have here is produced by the black lips of the animals. Yeah, I mean the color. So what do you have here? The color that you have here. So it's then produced by these animals inside, at the underneath of the leaf. Yeah. That's why they only need a young oyster that have a beautiful color inside only. If on the edge, for example, if on the edge of the mother of pearl, I mean here, okay, they don't have a beautiful color, so they won't sacrifice that oyster. Because, yeah, if it's beautiful color, so they're gonna sacrifice that oyster, and they're gonna cut the piece of living tissue of the black lips here. Okay, so she's gonna show it to you. Which part of the piece of living tissue they're going to use it for the graft. Okay?
How many grafts do you get?
Yeah. And just to give you an idea, when they sacrifice one young oyster, because they only need a square millimeter pieces of
Let's see the sacrifice.
the black lips. Okay? So when they sacrifice a young oyster, they can have like 40 or 50 little pieces from that black lips from one oyster. Yeah. Okay. So they can graft like 40 or 50 oysters. Okay. Yeah, she's gonna cut it. And oh, sorry. And this is the place where the pearl grows, and you have one inside this one. You see it? So this is also the sexual organ of the animal. This is where the eggs grows inside. So eggs grows inside also. So and then from there, the eggs is pushing from here. Comes out through this way. Comes this way and that's where the pearl is gonna grow inside. That's the pearl sac. Okay. So the first body that we need is a piece of living tissue. Okay, from another oyster. And the second body that we need is this. You guys know what is this?
Clamshell from Mississippi River.
That's it. That's it.
Good job, Daddy.
That's a mussel shell from Mississippi River. That's from this shell from Mississippi River.
That's a Mississippi
So, but that's what they call nucleus. Okay, so they call that marble nucleus. But this nucleus is not made here, so it's made in Japan. Okay, so Japanese, they harvest the mussel shell in the United States and they send the shell to Japan. They probably have a special machine to make it round like this. And this nucleus is just like a support for the black pearl. So it's going to be the seeds of the black pearl. Okay?
So this one already has a pearl in itself.
Yeah, so it's already grafted.
It doesn't need.
When they do the graft, okay? So when they do the graft, so they have to open the oyster like I show you, okay? Then for the first graft, they make the incision right here through here. When the incision inside is done, then they put a piece of living tissue through this way inside the pearl sac. And when the piece of living tissue is inside the sac, they get a small pieces of the first graft. Okay, they put a small pieces of nucleus inside. So roughly, they use a nucleus about 2.2 millimeter until 2.6 millimeter
Okay, what would
of
happen
nucleus.
if they put a big one in there?
So they're gonna break the pouch. So that's why they usually start with a small size of nucleus. Yeah.
So they
that's
don't
it.
use sand like they would in a natural.
Yeah.
Sand
Yeah,
also?
sand, or it could be also the piece of living tissue that coat itself.
Okay.
Coat itself. Yeah. That's why when they harvest a natural pearl, so they won't do another graft. They kill that oyster. So what's happened when the nucleus is inside the sac, the pearl sac, together with the piece of living tissue? Then the piece of living tissue is gonna coating the nucleus. Okay.
Oh, it's going to go around it.
Yeah, so it's gonna coat it, give the color to the nucleus, around the nucleus. Okay.